Let's see how you do under pressure. Oh, yeah. I've been wanting this forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early, feeling rich like I'm Kesha. I get to the paper, boy. Extra, extra. Walk with me.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome in to another episode podcast to talk about our favorite team, the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm already seeing people here in the chat saying I'm late. I am. I apologize about that, but we're going to go ahead and get started here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go ahead and give a huge shout out here to the sponsors of the AZ Sports Fan here on YouTube, and then we're going to go ahead and bring in my good buddy, Joe the Cardinal Roll. We're going to go ahead and obviously talk it up, chop it up, talk about Seattle versus Cardinals, and on top of that, just kind of how we got to the spot of right now. We're 6-4, an absolutely amazing feeling here to talk about November/December football. It's an amazing time to be alive, ladies and gentlemen. But let me give a huge shout out here to BetUS. If you're looking for a brand new sportsbook, BetUS is the way to go. Currently, right now, if you use promo code YouTube150, they will provide you with a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and a 125% sign-up bonus on the following two. That's going to be using promo code YouTube150 upon signing up. Of course, bet responsibly and bet within your means. Ladies and gentlemen, I already do have a super chat coming in here, so let me give some love here real quick to my guy, Matthew. Matthew, what's up, brother? Appreciate you, man. He says, let's go Cardinals. What do you think about us adding DJ back? Can't be here for much love, brother. Appreciate you, man. Thank you so very much. We will talk about this. I ended up making a video about this earlier this morning, actually about 50 minutes ago. I ended up dropping it. So we will be talking about this. I'm pretty sure Joe wants to go ahead and give his own take in this whole situation. So I thank you so very much for the super chat. We will get to this, I promise. But let's go ahead and get started here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's bring in Joe, the Cardinal Rule. What's up, man? How are you been? It's been an absolute long time.
It's been a minute, hasn't it, Mike? Man, I'm good, man. It's good to be with you. You know, we've been doing kind of collabs for a couple of years now, man, and I always enjoy getting on with you and talking Cardinals.
Absolutely. No, thank you so very much for coming in here. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I am a little under the weather, so if I need to mute myself or I need to give a little wiperoo here, that's going to be the reason why. But I wanted to bring you on here, Joe, because, you know, it's been a while since we've talked. And then, of course, you know, you did at one point pretty consistently cover the Arizona Cardinals in your respective matter. I'm curious to figure out where you feel or how do you feel about the Arizona Cardinals right now in terms of these 10 weeks that we've seen them. How do you think we got here? Because a lot of people thought that we were going to be rebuilding here. Of course, you know me. I'm always hyping up the Arizona Cardinals at the beginning of the season. We always think we're going to the playoffs or the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter if we're going to rebuild. But what are your thoughts? How do you feel like the Cardinals got to this level right now, 6-4 at the top of the division? Is this Jonathan Gannon? Is this Kyler Murray? What are your thoughts?
Yes. My thoughts are they're ahead of schedule because they were doing a rebuild, right? And I've talked about this on my live streams on my channel and on Twitter all the time. Typical textbook NFL rebuild is a 3-year process. Year one is massive roster overhaul, getting rid of aging vets, big contracts, guys that don't fit the future vision, and bringing in kind of value price free agents who are going to kind of help install the system and the culture, but focusing on the draft, right? And they did that year one, right? And they didn't spend a ton of money on free agency. They brought in guys like Yellow Froholt, who was from Cleveland, right? Who knew the system they're going to run, right? Guys like that. Kaiser White, who maybe hasn't played real well, but he played in Philadelphia, knows the system. But in year one, you usually expect your team to struggle, right? A lot of young players, you know, a roster that they're going to play hard, but the roster just can't do it, right? Year two is where you see progress, right? You see a team where those first year players from the year before are starting to kind of find their footing. You bring in a few more free agents, you add another draft class, and the talent's a little better. And you're pushing for a playoff spot, but you just barely miss in year two, right? And then year three is when you hit the playoffs and you're supposed to potentially be a contender. That's what the Lions' plan was like. And that's what they did, right? The thing is, the Cardinals are ahead of schedule for a couple of reasons. One, they already had a quarterback in place, right? A lot of times those rebuilds are starting with a young quarterback, right? And they had a quarterback who I know some people were down on. Anyone who follows my content knows I have been a staunch Kyler defender the whole way through. When people were saying, yeah, we need to tank for Caleb, trade Kyler and get Caleb. No. And you know that kind of worked out to be maybe not the best plan, right? Trying to go after Caleb, right? So Kyler is in a good system that actually uses his skill set better. I think that's part of it. Like, he's not having to do the hero ball with Cliff, right? He's never played in a system like this before. He always played in an air raid spread, so people assume that's what he was best in, and he was good in it. But he never played in this West Coast style kind of hybrid offense. But he's actually doing really well. He's not putting up tons of yards, but he's playing efficiently. He's not having to play hero ball, but when he does need to kind of put the cape on, he can. But Monty has done a fantastic job building this roster.
Yeah.
And listen, I know fans were kind of getting their pitchforks and torches when he wasn't spending money in free agency or when he didn't trade for Hassan Reddick. Yeah. And I was always preaching patience. I'm like, listen, I know it's not sexy, but the way you build is value free agents, focus on the draft. And if you're going to make a trade, do something more like what they did for that, 6th round pick for a pass rusher with potential. And he stayed the course. Gannon has installed the culture. And everything is just kind of hitting, the right note. But the thing that I'm really excited about is, like, in the past, as Cardinals fans, we're all used to waiting for the other shoe to drop. When's it going to fall apart, right? But that's under Kime, where he's like bringing in aging veterans who are their play is going to fall off and they're going to regress or they're going to get injured. Injuries still happen, but this is a young team, which means the players are going to get better, right? You have to understand, like, week 2 versus week 16, those players who were rookies this year or even rookies last year have had all those time on task reps, and they will get better. So yeah, the defense doesn't have any names that people other than Budda Baker kind of knew about. So people have been down on the defense. But I've looked at the PFF grades every week and I've watched it, and those players are just getting gradually better. And guys like, Garrett Williams, who's becoming a player, right? And guys, people say there's no names on this defense because we don't know them yet. They're all young. But some of these guys are developing into names. So listen, I'm excited. I think the rebuild is ahead of schedule. I think, and just with the way that I believe you should build a roster smart, premium positions to the draft, non-premium positions late in the draft or free agency, not overspending free agency, being smart, all the things that the analytics folks say you're supposed to do, the Cardinals are doing. So to me, Monty is the first person who's most responsible for it. And then Gannon and Kyler working together and what Gannon's doing with this coaching staff.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating to hear that. I do agree with Monty Ossenfort, man. The free agency, and it's crazy because obviously you can't predict injuries, right? But it's nuts because we were told Iron Man, and it has to be something in the water here in Phoenix, Arizona, that everybody unfortunately gets hurt. But it's one of those things where it almost didn't feel like it skipped a beat. This offensive line has still been working very well, especially when we've seen Jonah Williams go down in that small sample size that we've seen in the Buffalo Bills game. Kelvin Beachum struggled in the beginning, but got better. When Will Hernandez went down, Tristan Colon stepped up to the plate. So we're starting to see all these good depth players that it's we actually got depth now. And that's not even to mention his draft. I know you mentioned it a little bit, but we're talking about 5 or 6 this year alone, right? Players that are already making a very big, impact on this young roster right now. Whether you want to say, Tip Ryman, Dante Stills from last year, right? We're seeing all these players that some people might not think of big names, but here, the Cardinals fan base, we know them very well. But it's so crazy to see a general manager like Monty Ossenfort that actually knows how to draft, because that is how you got to build a foundation. That's how you got to build a roster through the draft. You get the free agent, picks here and there to kind of, put in a, fill in a hole here and there, but it was the opposite what Steve Keim used to do. Steve Keim was literally, let me build this roster to free agency. Let's make a big splash play. And when Monty Ossenfort, and you're right, I probably was one of those fans myself where I'm like, oh my God, you got to do this, you got to do that, right? It's just being a fan of the Arizona Cardinals. But with what he's done so far, I think he's already, to me, he's already reached a level of I'm not even going to question anymore. Even Baron Browning, when I ended up seeing the film back, and the impact that he had on this game with less than 30% of the snaps is crazy to see what he came out here and did in this Nick Riley / Jonathan Gannon defense. Did you get a chance to rewatch the film and look at Baron Browning and the things that he did? I was actually pretty impressed. I know it didn't show up in the stat sheet, but what are your thoughts overall on Baron Browning?
Yeah, I didn't rewatch the whole game, but I saw some replays, like the one spin move where he kind of disrupted the play that led to, I think, the fumble. Listen, and I did a video when they made that trade and talked about him. He's a guy who's, high athleticism. If you look at his RAS score, it's really, really good, right? Like elite level athleticism coming out of the draft. As been a guy who's, I think with Denver had like maybe like 4 and 5 sacks, for a couple of years, was having a little bit of a rough year this year. But he's the right kind of guy I thought to bring in. Like, I know people really wanted Hassan Reddick, and Hassan Reddick's a great player, but he's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And it's not about being cheap. It's about like where are you spending your money? Like, if you're spending that money on Hassan Reddick, then there's someone else you can't pay who's younger, who's emerging, right? And so I'd rather kind of develop our guys and then pay them when they become stars in their prime. So Browning was the right kind of trade. It wasn't super expensive, but he's making an impact. He's raised the floor in terms of the pass rush, and he has some potential upside. So like if he really hits and fits in the defense, it's not out of question that he could be a guy that they bring back, right, and develop, and he would be not terribly expensive. You get him on a 2 or 3. If he pops, you bring him back on maybe a 2-year deal, and instead of paying like 15 million or 20 million for someone like Hassan Reddick, maybe you're paying 8 million, right, for a guy who's emerging, and then you get some really good production, and then you get Robinson and then whoever you draft this next year, and like that money you've saved and building in house is money you can spend on guys like Trey McBride and guys that and PJJ, right, and you want to build it in house as much as you can so that you can spend on the studs you have developed, right, or young.
No, absolutely. I'm excited to see what this year is going to take us. Let's jump into this game here. It's been a while since we had a winning team here in Arizona. So now that we're 6-4, of course, there's a lot of Cardinal fans right now that are really, really excited about where we are at. 6-4, top of the division, and we got a really, really good crucial game coming our way with the Seattle Seahawks. In your opinion, how do you think we match up well? Because man, they just got a really good win versus the 49ers. Now, is that the 49ers not able to sustain a lead? Maybe, but what do you think about the Seattle Seahawks so far? Because I wasn't too high on them, but leave it up to the 1 year the Cardinals are at the top. We got everybody down there just clustered at 5-5, 5-5, 5-5. What are your thoughts overall on the Seattle Seahawks, and do you think they can actually win this game?
Yeah, absolutely they can. I mean, I think this is a team that has built a good roster. That Geno Smith is, he's what he is. He's hot and cold. He's a low level starter, right? And they built a good roster around him, right? And so the pass rush and some of the corner like Witherspoon is so good, right? So they're a tough matchup, But the way I kind of look at it is, if you look at the Cardinals season, right, they have lost 4 games to very good teams, like the Lions, who are looking like a juggernaut, right? The Bills, the Commanders, who we didn't at the time realize how good they were when we lost to them. So that loss felt worse than it was. And then the Packers, who are a really good team. Yeah. But every team we've played who's in this sort of middle of the pack range, right? The Bears, the Chargers, we've beat them all. Some of them narrowly, but like the Cardinals, like if you're trying to figure out where the Cardinals rank, like teams in the top 5 to 7 we've lost to, right, in terms of rankings. But everyone past that we've won, so like beaten. So at this point, Cardinals look like a 7, somewhere in the ranked 7th to 10th best team in the league, at least how they're playing right now. So like at this point, every team like the Seahawks they've played, they've beaten. So until they lose to a team in this tier, I'm going to pick them to win. So I think they match up well. But absolutely, you could see. I mean, it's a high variance league, right? They say any given Sunday. So, but I think the Cardinals match up well. I was listening to Brett Coleman and Mina Kimes talking about that. The Seahawks through most of the season have struggled against play action, and the Cardinals are doing that really well now. So there's a matchup issue there that could be in the Cardinals' favor. So we'll see how it goes, but I definitely like how the Cardinals match up and fare against Seattle.
Yeah, and the run too. They've kind of gotten it to the point where like it seems like they're figuring out in these last couple weeks, but like the run is still a big thing that they can't really stop it consistently. And of course, James Conner being the workhorse that we have, and then Trey Benson, and then Amari DeMarcado. We got some really good studs back there, so I'm really excited to see how this game's going to shake out for the Cardinals. Obviously, if we win, we're gonna be ecstatic as a Cardinal fan base. That'd be 5 in a row, but we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Let me ask you this real quick: how do you feel like Kyler Murray has looked from the beginning of the season to now? Do you think he struggled a little bit in the beginning? Because I'm one of those that I don't feel like he struggled, but I never said this is glimpses of 2021 Kyler Murray until like the last like 4 or 5 or 6 games. What are your thoughts on Kyler Murray?
I mean, if he, I think overall, I think he's been really good. If you look at his PFF grades, his first 2 games were good. Then he had a couple rough games, and he's been pretty good since then. So he's been a little up or down. But I think what we've seen, that Rams game, he was just out of this world. But since then, what I feel like we've seen is he's continued to get more comfortable in the system and to play within the system. In recent games, what you're seeing is not as many yards, but like just making the right read, right? Playing within the system, letting the running game do its job, working down the field, and chewing the clock, which is really important for this defense, right? Keeping the defense off the field. So, it just seems like every week it feels like you just see that he's getting more and more comfortable in the system that he never played in before, right? And that you're seeing and it's less about Kyler doing, again, superhero stuff and more about him playing within the system. And when he needs to make some big plays to kind of, salvage a third down. But no, I'm really excited at how well he's fit in the system. And listen, the national media is even talking MVP, him as one of the people in that conversation. So people are noticing. So yeah, no, I've been a Kyler defender for a long time. And, it's nice to take that little bit of a victory lap. Like, hey, guess what? Kyler wasn't the problem. Sure, he had room to mature like every 20-something, but he wasn't the problem.
Yeah, it is crazy too because like you've seen a level of Kyler Murray too, like since he started the season or his career, I'm sorry, until now. And just like the things that he posts on social, it's just you can tell that like the camaraderie he's really believing it, that the culture he's really believing it, right? James Conner and him, almost hang out all the time they post something. If not, he took the offensive line to a D-backs game, right? These are the type of things that like a lot of people were looking at saying, oh, you should do this, you should do that, right? We want to see you more leadership, right? But I understand it all. And that whole thing with the whole Larry Fitzgerald, or I'm sorry, not Larry Fitzgerald, but when he got into the locker room as a rookie, his personality was not one to try to rally, all these 34-year-old guys that have established a lot in the NFL because he was such a young guy that he was more a lead by example type of guy. But of course, the Cardinals struggled in the beginning here with his tenure. I mean, we've shown flashes here and there what Kyler Murray can do, but like you now can see that he's taken on this leadership role of being that veteran now, right? Which is crazy to say, but it is 6 years already, which is nuts. But it's really cool to see the development of Kyler Murray from the beginning, even year 2 or year 3 of Cliff to now. I really love what I'm seeing. I really am.
And I've heard someone else say this, so this is an original thought of mine, but and maybe it was even Kyler who said this in an interview, but like this is such a young team that now I think there's a generational thing. Like I teach college. That's my day job is I teach at a university. So like when people were talking about Kyler, how he conducts himself, whatever, I was like, he doesn't seem any different than the college kids I'm around every day. I think it's a generational thing. Guys like Kelvin Beachum, God bless him, old man Beachum is like, this young whippersnapper, right? It's like, it's Beachum acting like a boomer, but like, with this roster now being so young, right?
Right.
You have so many young players. I think at least like, yes, Kyler has matured, like again, like any person will, but I think part of it is with this younger roster, like I think they relate to him better than the 30-somethings that you're talking about, right? And now he's also a veteran, and I think his leadership style probably works better with these young players, than it did with the older players. And so I think that's a little bit of a part of the dynamic too that we're seeing. I think he's learned how to be a better leader, but I also think the generation thing is meshing better with who he is in terms of a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get to my guy Matthew here at the Super Chat that went ahead and provided us with a $5 donation here. Appreciate you. I wasn't able to get to early. I have a question for you about this here. Specifically that DJ Humphries thing. I'm not sure if you saw the report here from Ian Rappaport, but he said that he's now medically cleared after the ACL tear. What are your thoughts here? Do you think the Cardinals should? Do you want them to? Or do you just think that the Cardinals will just kind of back off? Because we're pretty good on the O-line right now, to be honest with you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I mean, appreciate DJ all he did for the years he was a Cardinal, but I think we're building for the future. I think you've got PJJ on the left, you've got now you've got Jonah Williams coming back, and you still have Beachum. I think DJ is going to probably play somewhere else, and I don't think there's any reason to go after him right now. If they did sign him, sure, but I think he's going to command. Not that he's going to command top dollar, but at this point, I just don't think there's there's the value in spending that money. Because we have, if we lose a tackle, Beachum has shown he can fill in. Probably, honestly, with the fact that DJ is coming back from injury, even though he's a better player than Beachum has been, I think Beachum would play better right now if you put the two of them on the field, right? So, what does he bring to the table for the Cardinals? He's a fourth tackle who they're spending money on. Let him go find somewhere else where he might get to play. I just don't think there's any reason to do that.
Just doesn't make sense. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, the only way I would see him even come on here is the understanding that you're going to be a depth player. Because you got Jonah Williams coming back potentially. And then, of course, Kelvin Beachum's been playing really, really good. So I'm curious to figure out how the Cardinals are going to decide who's going to be that right tackle. I mean, of course, Paris Johnson Jr. is just absolutely amazing. Really, really good pickup last year for the Cardinals in the first round. So, yeah, it really doesn't make sense. I would love to bring him back. I just love his personality, the infectious smile. Just who he is as a person would be great. Absolutely. But, it's under the understanding that, you're going to be depth. And that's probably not what he's looking for. He's probably looking for a starting role, which he could probably find, especially if there is going to be injuries closer towards the playoffs. So, all right, perfect. All right, well, let me ask you about this real quick. So, Seahawks Cardinals, right? Pretty big matchup coming our way. Right now, it seems like we're seeing a emergence of JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba over there. What is one player, if it's him, makes sense? What's one player that you think we need to worry about in the Seattle Seahawks right now in terms of an offensive weapon?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, to me, he's Jason's really, or Smith and Jigba is a really great player. From a matchup perspective, I maybe worry a little more about Metcalf as this big physical receiver, right? In terms of, I mean, listen, Jason can certainly go off and have a great game, but with our young outside corners, right? I mean, Garrett Williams, I think, is up to the task for trying to cover it, right, JSN?
Yeah.
But is Metcalf going to kind of take advantage of some of our younger outside corners, as big and physical as he is? So that would probably be at least on the offensive side, a player I'm kind of more concerned about. Obviously, on the defensive side is pass rush, right? That's
true.
That's we worry about. But our offensive line's been playing well, so maybe that's not as much of a concern. But yeah, Metcalf for me would be the bigger concern.
Bigger concern. That's fair. So yeah, we've talked a little bit about Geno Smith. I don't think any of us think that he's top 10 or anything like that, but he's putting some very good numbers up in terms of letting the ball fly. But right now, 11 interceptions, 11 touchdowns. I can see a world where the Cardinals do potentially force a turnover. I think we've been doing pretty darn well. And even when it comes down to pressures for the Cardinals, even if it's not on the stats, we're providing pressure. I mean, sometimes it's just we're not able to wrap it up. But for the most part, this defense from Nick Rallis as well as Jonathan Gannon, it's actually been pretty solid with the pieces that we have. What is that one player that you think is going to go off here in terms of in our D line, potentially a sack, or just wreaking havoc here on that O-line? Because I don't think they got a really good O-line, or at least I don't think they have the greatest O-line in Seattle.
Their offensive line has a couple weak links. Cross is really good. Lucas is good. They're Oluwatimi, their center's good, but they're Tomlinson's. It's their right guard is kind of their weak
right guard.
Link, right? Yeah, so if you're looking for who's going to kind of take advantage, it's that kind of the issue is the interior, right? That right guard position. So I mean, Stills could end up taking advantage of that, right? If Darius Robinson comes back, I don't want to expect too much, his first game back, but Robinson potentially, but it's that interior pass rush with Stills could take advantage of that right guard. That's their weak link.
So now that you mentioned Darius Robinson, it's trending like he's going to. I know Jonathan Gannon said, wait for the injury report. I can very well see him being listed as questionable. Do you think we see a small dosage of Darius Robinson? Obviously, even when he is 3 weeks in, he's probably not going to play 100%. Guys, 100% of the snaps because that's not what this defensive line does anyways. But do you think we do see the debut of Darius Robinson this week?
I think there's a good chance we'll see, at least a little bit. I think they'll ease him in,
Yeah.
but I think it's time. I think that he had some personal stuff, family, tragic stuff he was dealing with that I think delayed his. I think if it weren't for that, he might have already been playing from a health perspective, from at least from what we're hearing. But yeah, I think, but I wouldn't expect a heavy dose of him. I think they're going to ease him in, but I think there's a good chance we see him. That's my guess, at least.
Right, exactly. It is trending in the right direction. I mean, everything that we're kind of hearing is that he's been practicing, even if it's limited. Jonathan Gannon says that he's looking, and he's been working off the field, supposedly per Jonathan Gannon, like with all the medical staff and stuff like that for the prior week. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry. Who in this division are you worried about right now? Obviously, 6-4 with the Cardinals. Everybody else is 5-5, 5-5, 5-5. Do you think that there is a level of concern for you, for maybe the 49ers to get it right, the Rams to get it right? Do you think the Seahawks? Who do you think is that one team that the Cardinals need to look out for?
The 49ers would be a team I'd be most worried about because, they have they've had some injuries. That's a problem, but I just trust their coach more than the other coaches. Well, I mean, McVay's good, but more than in Seattle, but they have a good roster and they have a quarterback who's shown he can play really well. And they were coming into the season, the team that people thought would be the class of the division, and they've struggled. So to me, that's until I see otherwise, in terms of them falling off the cliff for a long period of time, that's the team I'm always, in this division worried about between the coach and the roster and the quarterback.
So, yeah, the injuries seem to be kind of piling up for the 49ers right now. There was something kind of going around with even Brock Purdy not seeming to be full health. So we'll have to kind of wait and see how that shakes out here with Brock Purdy. But I think the Rams are another one that are kind of very interesting because obviously they're getting healthier too and then Matthew Stafford. Do you think he's the best quarterback in the division, Matthew Stafford?
I mean, I'm a homer. I think Kyler is.
That's fair.
But I think he's. I mean, I think it's a tough. There's an argument either way. I think he's the most. He's the classic franchise quarterback, right?
That's fair.
He's the big arm. People around the league respect him as a player. Like so, he's. You could make that argument, right? I think Kyler's ascending. Purdy's good too, obviously. But I mean, and when you think about, you asked the question about which team I'm most worried about. The second was definitely the Rams because with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, you always have a chance.
Yeah,
right.
100%. Yeah, I'm not sure. Have you looked very far in terms of like the schedule and what they have to deal with? It's not easy. Like they got a pretty nasty schedule for the 49ers. I think the 49ers might have the toughest, then the Rams, and I think the Seahawks, and then us. So we got a easier path, or I guess like it just depends on how you ask, right? So like if the Cardinals beat the Rams, the Cardinals beat the Seahawks, then of course we seem to have the easier schedule. But if it's the opposite of way round, you can kind of say, either or. But like the 49ers have to play the Bills, the Lions, they still got a tough, and then the Rams too. The Rams have they have the Eagles this week, which I don't think it's going to be an easy game for them to try to win. But like every win so far in this division is so crucial. Like if the Cardinals want to get some sort of space between everybody else, it almost kind of feels like this isn't a must win, but it would damn well help. to definitely try to make some sort of wiggle room between everybody in the division. Let me ask you this, and I know kind of throwing a lot of questions at you.
No,
looking at the schedule, do you see 10 wins for the Cardinals?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple games that, for them to not win, there's 3 games, I think. Well, 2 games that things would completely have to fall wheels off for them not to win, right? That's Patriots and Panthers, right? And I know you never want to completely chalk up, but like the way things are going, those are games they should win, right? So that gets them to 8. So then you've got to find 2 more wins between 2 games against Seattle, right? I could easily see them getting one of those, if not both of them.
Right.
And then find 1 more win between the Vikings, the Rams, and the 49ers. Like you tell me they can't win one of those 3 games. I'm predicting a roughly 10 wins, maybe even 11 at this point with what they've done. But I could easily see them taking 2, both against Seattle, Patriots, Panthers, right? That's 4. And taking one of those games, Rams, 49ers, 5 more, like that's 11 wins, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not crazy to think that, right? Now, listen, I know as Cardinals fans, we're all waiting for the wheels to fall off, right?
Yep.
And you never know. It's a long season. Things can happen. But like, I think 10 or 11 wins is like not pie in the sky. It's not a pipe dream. It's absolutely realistic. In fact, some like as well as they've played, winning, 4 in a row, 5 of the last 6, and again beating every team that wasn't a top 5 to 7 team. You look at this and like it'd be like it's more likely, or it'd be more surprising that they don't win 10 games because because they've shown this consistently beating those middle of the pack teams, right? And they haven't lost to a middle of the pack team at all this year. So like if they to not get 10 wins, they'd have to start losing to those middle of the pack teams because that's what most of their games are remaining.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know everybody kind of tells me don't jinx it. But like if the Cardinals want to see themselves as a team, I know Kyler Murray wants the playoffs. I know James Conner, Budda Baker, they want the playoffs. Like if they want to see themselves as that type of, you got to take care of business against the teams that you should beat, right? Panthers, Patriots, maybe taking one from the Seahawks. And I know like when we're saying like I could see a sweep there too, but like I want to see what this game looks like first here versus Sunday. It looks like to be maybe another rainy game the Cardinals are going to deal with. So I'm curious to figure out how the game plan is going to look forward to is here with James Conner and all the rest of the run game. So super curious about that. Okay. Next thing. Okay, we talked about Kyler, talked about 10 wins. Okay, we already talked about that. Okay, sorry. I'm already kind of going through the stuff in my header.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just real quick 2025. 2025, and I know we want to finish this one off. What do you think right now is the biggest need for the Arizona Cardinals? Are you still in that boat with edge rusher or defensive line? Like, let's just look to the future in 2025. What do you think is the biggest need for the Cardinals?
Yeah, absolutely. It's edge rush and interior defensive line is 1A, 1B, right? If you need pass rush, right? So if they want to go with like a studly interior defensive lineman who also provides pass rush, first, great. But that's it. I think the offense. I like ESPN had someone did an article about saying they needed to get another receiver, and I actually don't think they like. I don't think that's a big need because I think they're building this offense. Not that it's the same type of offense, but in terms of the scheme necessary. But think about Baltimore: quarterback, maybe one good receiver, a really good tight end, and then some. Right? That this is not like an air raid offense that needs 4 wideouts. You need like McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, and some nice players behind them. As much as you run and play multiple tight end sets, you have all the pass catchers you need. If they want to add someone, great, but they don't need that, right? They have Connor, they have Benson. Maybe they draft another running back for the future, right? To add to that stable, but the offense they just need to kind of keep keep drafting an offensive lineman every year to build the pipeline, right? Build some depth players, but the offense. They don't need to do anything with the offense, right?
It's funny that you mentioned the wide receiver thing because I did see it on ESPN, and I also when I was doing a collaboration with one of my Seahawks guys, it was a thing that he told me too. He asked me to, and that's my same response. So I was like, I don't think we need it, but he was like, what if somebody falls to you that like you would want to pair with Marvin? And I was like, well, if that's the case, and that's different, right? Because although I do like Michael Wilson as a wide receiver number 2, if somebody does drop to you in the draft, I don't know, it just seems kind of like it's not something that I would even thought of, right? Like it's defense in my mind here when it comes down to 2025. But like just the idea of potentially getting another young stud, that would be crazy. It'd be crazy because I know you've been really, really high on Greg Dortch even before I have, but we're not really seeing a big dosage of Greg Dortch, and I don't think it's his fault. I think it's just opportunity and just what this offense is. It's just run heavy. So I don't know. I'm curious to figure out how the Arizona Cardinals are going to do that. But I agree. I think edge and D-line.
I don't think this is the kind of offense they're going to run. I don't think they're going to invest heavily in down the line of receivers. They're going to have a number 1, and then they're going to have some guys that they like Michael Wilson that are not as expensive, and they're going to have Trey McBride. And that's all they're going to need, right? I think because when you draft that guy in the first round, let's say, then you have to pay. There's a point you have to pay him. And for the type of offense they're running, I think those dollars are better allocated to a defense, right?
Yeah.
But like terms of a lot of people talk about cornerback as a need, and I actually like their cornerback play aside from Garrett Williams has been up and down, but it's because they're so young, but
Right.
they've invested draft capital, right? So I think what you need is for Max Melton to develop, right? And then,
Mhm.
they like Starling Thomas, and he's been a nice, surprise as an undrafted free agent. Um, you have some guys that they drafted, who's Eli Jones, who's been injured. Like what maybe he'll bring something to the table, so like I think they developed the guys they drafted at cornerback. Maybe they draft another guy in the middle rounds, but like even though they need their cornerback play to be better, I think they're going to get that through developing the guys they've already drafted, not by putting heavy draft capital on that. So I think it's the defensive line across the board, and the edge rusher, and maybe later picks, maybe get a safety, another, for the future, get some inside linebacker help, but to me, I would not be shocked if their first 3 picks are all front 7.
Ooh. It's
Yeah.
funny that you actually mentioned cornerback 'cause I've been hearing that as well when it comes down to, like, when we were talking about the trade deadline. People were like, "Oh, cornerback, cornerback." In my mind, I was like, I understand the guys we have are young, but, like, they're showing promise. They're showing the ability to be able to do so. Like, maybe Max Melton, we used a second round pick on him. Garrett Williams, we used a third round pick on him last year. I mean, Garrett Williams is starting to show development, like, really, really good. Starling Thomas wasn't a waiver pick. I think he was originally with the Lions, and
He's he's a UDFA, right?
oh,
Undrafted
was he?
free agent.
Okay, that's right, okay.
Starling Thomas, yeah.
I coulda sworn he was with the Lions first, right? I didn't think they released
He
him,
might
and
have been.
I think we jumped on him, and yeah, he's been a stud too. I mean, it's crazy because, Sean Murphy-Bunting was supposed to be our cornerback for the Cardinals, number 1. It's just a lot of people are kind of wanting to get the pain and struggles for Max Melton to go with that, because it's funny because it's like, oh, Sean Murphy Bunting gets burned. It's like, oh my god, he sucks, he's terrible. If Max Melton gets burned, oh, it's growing pains, right? He's got to go through this, and it's I want to see a little bit more Max Melton myself. I know he was not in practice yesterday, but I think he was today. So I don't know. We'll have to kind of wait and see. But how do you feel about Max Melton?
I think the physical tools are there. He's been up and down. He's had some really rough games if you look at his PFF
Yeah.
grade and some good games. So he's a guy who has the tool. He just needs to keep, as they say, JG says, time on task. They need to keep developing him. He needs the coaching. He needs the playing time. And we'll see what he. It could go either way in terms of does he become that guy, because Marco Wilson had those physical tools, right? But it didn't work out, right? So,
Oof.
but
Uh,
but I'm optimistic because I trust this. I trust Monty's drafting, and I think JG knows how to develop those guys. So yeah, with cornerback, I feel like it's kind of like the Hunger Games. You've got a bunch of young guys, and you see who survives to become the stud, right? And
yeah.
like between Melton, Elijah Jones, and Keitrell Clark and
Mm,
Starling Thomas, right? And plus Jaden Davis, the guy they drafted. But you have like 4 young guys that you need to. 2 of those 4 need to become starting cornerbacks,
right.
or if that happens, if 2 of those 4 guys become decent starting cornerbacks, you've already got Garrett Williams, and you're set, right? So yeah, I'm not investing heavily in that room. I'm letting those guys develop, and maybe if you want to bring another third rounder in, but I think you just see which one of those someone's going to pan out. Starling Thomas has shown he can be your number 1 of your outside cornerbacks. He may not be an elite player, but
Right.
he can hold down one of those spots. So you just need that other spot, one of those other 3 guys, to develop well enough to be a starter, and you're set.
Right. Agree. All right. Last question. I swear.
Okay.
um, there was talks about Petzing at the beginning of the season, right? Potentially becoming head coach. There was a little bit of a struggle those in the beginning of the season, or at least inconsistency. And I know he's kind of died down. Now that the Cardinals are on a 4-game winning streak right now, obviously it depends on how the Cardinals finish off this season. But do you think there's a real possibility if the Cardinals do win? Let's say, for example, our prediction, 10 wins, and maybe hit the playoffs, hopefully NFC West. Do you think we are looking for another OC next year?
Yeah, I think like I know he obviously like his run scheme is the part that was really the what his what he was best at, right?
Hmm.
And when things were struggling, people were really frustrated. A lot of fans were talking about fire Petzing, right?
Yeah.
Because of the passing game, right? Um, but I think coaches, just like players, need to develop. He's a young offensive coordinator, and I think he's getting better. I think the player part of the struggles were the players getting in. They're getting sometimes it just all takes some time for everything to mesh, right? If they continue with what they're doing and continue to play well and they don't regress and fall off a cliff, right? If they keep playing like they have been offensively, I think he's going to be an offensive head, or he's going to be a head coach next year, because that's the guy you look for. You look for that ascending offensive coordinator, and I think they've already got their next offensive coordinator in house, right? That's what's his name? I think he's the quarterback coach.
Is it Spencer Whipple?
No. I'd have to look it up, but he's a guy that JG brought in, who and I'm gonna look it up, but I think that's the next coach. And like one of the things I've heard in recent years, is that when you are hiring a head coach, one of the things they're now asking in interviews is not just who's your offensive coordinator, but who is the guy who's going to be the offensive coordinator. I think Drew Terrell is actually the guy who's going to probably be. He's the passing game coordinator, wide receivers coach. He is probably the next offensive coordinator after that, and then Israel Wolfolk, the quarterback's coach, they probably promote him, or someone to. I think they have this succession plan in place, and when you hire a head coach, they ask who's your offensive coordinator, but they also ask who's his replacement. Like that's part of the interview process. You have to have your next two offensive coordinators planned out, and so I think they already know exactly who it's going to be, and it's probably Drew Terrell.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, we will be closing up shop here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again, Joe, for jumping on here and obviously talking some Arizona Cardinals. If you guys do not know, or if you do not follow him, in the description, there is a tag where his channel is going. Make sure you shoot him a subscribe on over there. Let me give another shout out here to real quick, the sponsors of the AZ Sports Fan here on YouTube. And then we're going to go and bring this back up. But huge shout out here to BetUS. If you're looking for a brand new sportsbook, BetUS is the way to go. Currently, right now, if you use promo code YouTube150, they will provide you with a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit and 125% sign-up bonus on the following two. That's going to be up to $2,000 by using promo code YouTube150 upon signing up. Of course, bet responsibly and bet within your means. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be closing up shop right here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Any last words, or do you want to plug your channel or any of your social medias, Joe, before we go ahead and let these fine people go?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Mike. It's always good hanging out with you. We've been doing this for a few years, and I always enjoy, just chatting with you. Follow me on YouTube at The Cardinal Rule. You can follow me on Twitter at JOKOMO13, JoKomo13. And I'm also now on Blue Sky Social, for folks who are jumping on there. It's Joseph Comeau, JOSEPHCOMEAU.BSKY.social. So find me there as well. And thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited about this season, and we'll have to do this again.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. Have a great rest of your day, and as always, go Cardinals.